Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. It's a Monday and a fabulous one at that, I'm sure. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Also on YouTube. You can watch us there. Springfield's Talk 1041. While it is Monday, Friday will be here before you know it. And we will be, of course, broadcasting live out at none other than Scramblers, that Friday Road show sponsored by the good people at Shirley's Heating and Air. Trump sitting down doing another interview over the weekend, and of course, it's as usual. It is what one would expect coming from the media, highlighting all of the negatives, ignoring all of the positives. And Trump, does what Trump does and calls him out on it. There's one bit of audio that is just so. It's a snapshot of a press that does not act as an outlet to provide the American people with, hey, here's what's going on in the world. And when it came the issue of tariffs and the economy, Kirsten Welker over at NBC, she's like, well, the price of strollers are up. She's picking like these random different items that, of course, are going to be meaningful to some people. But Trump has to list all of the things, including groceries. The price of groceries have gone down, which she's like, yeah, oh, well, yeah. You're going and you're finding, strollers to complain about when the price of energy is down, the price of oil specifically is down, the price of groceries are down, all of these other areas. Just within the first 100 days already seen marked improvement. But you wouldn't know it. You would have no idea if you listened to the media. In fact, some of these outlets straight up and just allow people to lie, namely Democrats, falsely claiming that all prices are going up. If you don't know any better, you would think that we are in some sort of economic turmoil, and that the pricing of everything has skyrocketed since Trump has become president. Now, the problem that the media is having to some degree with this is the same problem that they had trying to convince Americans that prices weren't going up when Biden was president. At first you get caught up in the hype. Some people do because they see it reported this way, so they think it must be true. But at some point they begin to think, well, wait a minute here. When it came to Biden, for example, they keep telling me prices aren't going up or that this is something only affecting rich people, but I'm not able to buy as many groceries as I was once upon a time. My paycheck doesn't go as far as it did. And it took about, I'd say, 6 months to a year before Americans really realized what they're telling us isn't true. And in similar fashion, we can expect this to play out with the Trump administration, where they are trying to tell people, you don't know how bad you have it. You don't know, it's economic chaos. I saw one headline, and it was, they love to use the word chaos and confusion. It's just being run so into the ground, people just don't even know what's going on. And at some point, people do, and you already meet, most of you are probably at this point, you're like, this is not accurate. This is not the experience I'm having at the grocery store. And when you have NBC Nightly News, clearly had to go searching to find some item that they could specifically list as having, being impacted by tariffs, and strollers happens to be that item. Now, strollers aren't something that the average person on any given day is pricing. It's not like at the grocery store, or even if you're not necessarily buying eggs or milk, you notice the price. People are talking about the price of these things because they see them every day. Strollers aren't something that are real top of mind. Obviously, some people need them. Some people are in the market for them, but it's not an everyday item. So that tells us that NBC, they had to go searching to find anything that had what they could describe as a meaningful price increase that's going to really hit the bottom line of the average American's budget. And, for the class of people that downplayed forever real struggles that Americans were having just going to the grocery store, and now ignoring the fact that the Trump administration policies has put a stop to that. They just are seemingly so concerned now with the average family's budget. Oh, how are they supposed to make it? Isn't it interesting how they turn around? Also, speaking of turnarounds, it has become clear that the Democrats have decided they want Fetterman out. Fetterman, the Democrat senator from Pennsylvania, who is widely known for, among other things, being drug across a finish line in which he was hidden away in Biden style during the election to hide his cognitive impairments, and he would end up winning that election. And to the chagrin of Democrats, he has come out against anti-Semitism, and they do not like him very much because of that. They've now embarked on an effort to now paint him as cognitively impaired, paint him as strange and bizarre. All of a sudden, you have these anonymous sources, anonymous staffers that, in a piece in the New Yorker, are expressing their grave concerns about the fact that he's not all there. Now, isn't that interesting? So clearly he does have a target on his back. We got Congressman Burleson coming up later on in the program as well. Of course, any of the show that you do miss, you can't catch live. You can get in podcast form at ksgf.com, Spotify, iTunes, other places as well. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 70. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 48. For your Tuesday, cloudy with a high near 73. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then showers in the afternoon with a high near 68.
A new expose about Senator John Fetterman, Democrat, Pennsylvania, setting social media ablaze on Friday. The report raising questions about alleged tensions with his wife, Giselle, over his health regimen, his stance on Israel, and her reported run-ins with his staff. Now, this is all very clearly, this is to get him out of there. The Democrats do not like Fetterman. Really, two driving reasons. One, he is not anti-Semitic, and he has called out anti-Semitism at a time in which the younger demographic of their party has been soaked in DEI and CRT, and that, of course, translates to anti-Semitism. Someone who is not anti-Semitic or who is Jewish is certainly not that welcome in the Democrat Party. And Fetterman has been very unapologetically outspoken in his opposition to anti-Semitism. His other sin is that he has no trouble having conversations with Republicans, talking to Donald Trump, agreeing in some areas while definitely disagreeing in others. And of course, if you are a Democrat, and according to Democrats, any good American, it doesn't matter what Trump does, you have to be opposed to it. Because agreeing with Trump on any issue, no matter how significant or insignificant, is a sign that you are collaborating with the Nazis. And that's the black and white world of these silos created by the left that we're living in. And for a country and media that long loved to, reaching across the aisle. That means Republicans do what Democrats want them to do. That is the version of reaching across the aisle that the left really believes in. And we see that in their behavior towards somebody like a John Fetterman or even a non-political person like a Bill Maher, who certainly is not a fan of Trump, thinks he's a horrible president, but said, the guy isn't, a horrible human being, and just explained his experience in the White House at the invitation of Trump. And it is, you must be at all costs the enemy of Donald Trump and Republicans. And because Fetterman is doing what it is that many Democrats used to claim they wanted, the reaching across the aisle, the bipartisanship, that is the other great sin that he has committed. So they're out to oust him, to get him out of there. So New Yorker magazine, Intelligencer, laid out recollections from current and former staff members who worked for the Pennsylvania Democrat. The title of the piece, All by Himself. John Fetterman insists he's in good health, but staffers past and present say they no longer recognize the man they once knew. The article relates several reported instances, including a February 2023 situation at a Democratic caucus retreat at the Library of Congress. One staffer telling the New Yorker that he received a message questioning how Fetterman was doing, and he was found sitting at a table alone, silently drinking a soda. The report went on to claim that the lawmaker was nearly struck by a car and found wandering around Capitol Hill. Now, this is 2023. They're claiming these things happen. So it's playing out as if it is a repeat of Joe Biden. Someone that they claimed was perfectly fine. Someone that they claimed had absolutely no problems whatsoever. Oh, he's been cleared by a doctor. Here's a letter. Here's a note from his doctor saying he's perfectly fine. That while he did have trouble, and not to the degree that he did a couple of years ago, but had problems speaking, we were told numerous occasions that it didn't have anything to do with his ability to think. It was just the ability to articulate what it was that his brilliant mind was thinking. Well, now what we're hearing is that they were all lying to us during that period of time. And in fact, he would just be found wandering aimlessly and confused through the streets of Washington, D.C. Physicians at George Washington University Hospital later determined that upon nearly being struck by a car as he was wandering through the streets of Capitol Hill, that he was severely dehydrated and had not had a second stroke as feared. An ensuing discussion with then Senator Sherrod Brown, Democrat Ohio, found Fetterman to be nearly catatonic. When Brown tried to talk with him soon after, on February 15th, he was admitted to Walter Reed Medical Center. After being discharged, Fetterman threw himself into Senate work and became more vociferous than ever on issues like the Israeli-Gaza conflict and other topics that have rankled his Democratic colleagues. See, this is where the real problem comes in. He also took a leading role in calling for the ouster of now former Senator Robert Menendez, Democrat, New Jersey, amid corruption allegations. The article reading, former and current staffers paint a picture of an erratic senator who has become almost impossible to work for and whose mental health situation is more serious and complicated than previously reported. Now, we should note, than previously reported by his own people, the people that apparently now are talking. After staffers wrote a letter about Fetterman's gutting betrayal supporting Israel, the report went on to allege that his wife confronted him about Jerusalem, quote, bombing refugee camps. How can you support this, end quote. Giselle reportedly also went to staffers with her concerns, while a Senate physician in December 2023 reported him acting bizarrely near the Senate subway while he had not had blood work in months. The hulking lawmaker also reportedly nearly knocked over folks walking inside the U.S. Capitol. Both types of incidents reportedly rankled his wife, who was vociferous on the matter, according to the magazine piece. Social media became a buzz after the article dropped, with Bloomberg columnist Matthew Iglesias calling it a very sad story on a human level, but of course it's also politics and can't be addressed purely on that level. Left-wing former MSNBC host Mehdi Hasan wrote that the story and color from former staffers there, and quote, makes clear that Fetterman should not be serving in the U.S. Senate. Every Senate Democrat should read this and be asked about it. A California progressive group reacting by writing that the story is an indictment of populist lawmakers, saying whether they're left or right, whether they agree with your preferred politics or not, populism will not get you the best leaders. Another user saying that the story showed his wife as, quote, evil. These are not red flags. There is a siren going off, said one. John Fetterman is not taking his meds. He needs inpatient care. Now, of course, there are others who are pointing out the obvious, and that is they had no problem with Fetterman when he was apparently at his worst. It wasn't until he started, just displaying that he was willing to reach across the aisle, that he did not see Trump as Hitler, and that he refused to bend a knee to the anti-Semites within the Democrat Party, that suddenly they have these grave concerns about Fetterman. There's some more interesting tidbits including accusations, more specific ones about his wife and about Fetterman's behavior. We'll share that coming up. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, the website hunterhardscapes.com, premier landscaping services in the area, outdoor living space design, retaining walls, sod installation, garden bed construction, efficient draining solutions, landscape lighting. With Hunter Hardscape and Outdoor, every project is an opportunity to craft a unique outdoor space that reflects your personal style, meeting your specific needs. Now, if you're like me, I don't know what I don't know, and when the beginning of my project, the planning phase, I was like, listen, I kind of just want a place to put my smoker, to put a grill. I want a place to be able to entertain if we want to, but also sit out and just enjoy the outdoors and turn it into a living space. I said, beyond that, I don't know. I'm not a designer. I can't think these things up in my mind. And they took what I have been looking to utilize my outdoor living space for and turned that into a design. So you may have in your head exactly what it is you want with water features and lighting and sound incorporated into it. Or you may be like me and like, here's what I'm going to use it for. I just make something magic for me. And then they can do that as well. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. You can find them at hunterhardscapes.com. Also KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. The Democrats have the knives out for John Fetterman, and this is so reminiscent of what we as Americans were drugged through by the Democrats and the media with Joe Biden. And that was all of us, with our very eyes, see there's something wrong with the guy. We're told there's nothing wrong with the guy other than his speech. I mean, even that part of the downplaying of the behavior of Fetterman, that, well, his mind's working just fine. He just has a bit of a speech issue because of the stroke, but that has nothing to do with his mind. And that's reminiscent of, well, Joe Biden, he just has a stutter. His mind is fine. He's the sharpest guy in the world, but he's just got a stutter, and that's all that there is in terms of any sort of problem. But his cognitive abilities are just fine, and we, as normal thinking people, we see this and we're like, that's not what's going on here. And then Democrats get to the point where they decide we want to throw this guy overboard. And so then they start talking about, oh, yeah, we've been seeing this for years. The guy's a nut job. That's what they did to Joe Biden. And that's what they're doing with John Fetterman. Now, much of Biden, it was just so painfully obvious. And I think that a lot of people did, including Republicans, give Fetterman the benefit of the doubt because they, in the past year, have observed Fetterman while he's still his frumpy self, and at times he does have a difficulty finding the words. He seems to remember things. He could sit down, do an interview, and when you look past the speech part of it, you think, well, he's making some sense here, which was opposed to Joe Biden. And you just go down the list of problems that Joe Biden had. Now, these people, these former staffers that are anonymous, we don't know how much of what they're saying is true. This is part of the problem with the media. It's part of the problem with these Democrats. Whether, this is something that is as bad as they are now describing it, they were lying all of this time, or are they just utilizing what have been concerns that many Americans have had up until now as a weapon in order to throw him overboard? According to the New York Magazine piece, there was a former chief of staff by the name of Adam Jettleson who wrote a 1,600-word email to Fetterman's doctor at Walter Reed Hospital. Quote, "We do not know if he's taking his meds, and his behavior frequently suggests he is not." The email also referencing Fetterman's, quote, conspiratorial thinking. Megalomania, for example, he claims to be the most knowledgeable source on Israel and Gaza around, but his sources are just what he reads in the news. He declines most briefings and never reads memos. the other part of this that is somewhat humorous is this could easily, the description that they're giving of his behavior, be Joe Biden. Joe Biden, there's never been a president that is more pro-Israel than me. There's never been a president that, and he would go down the list, and oftentimes things were proven not to be true. I met with this leader this many amount of times, and I traveled this much around the world meeting with world leaders. The former chief of staff in the letter to the doctor continued, high highs and low lows, long rambling, repetitive and self-centered monologues, lying in ways that are painfully, awkwardly obvious to everyone in the room. Again, this easily could have been a letter to Joe Biden's doctor. We're going to get a traffic update, more of what they are now revealing to us out of great concern for the sanctity of the Senate and, of course, the people of Pennsylvania's constituents. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 70. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 48. For your Tuesday, cloudy skies with a high near 73. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then showers in the afternoon with a high near 68.
The parallels between the treatment of Fetterman, the Democrat senator from Pennsylvania, and Joe Biden, once the Democrats worried that he would not be able to win re-election, it is just uncanny. And there have been some social media postings that have begun this as Fetterman, is he okay? Is this, suddenly they have this newfound concern. And the New Yorker has a piece that talks to former staffers and former folks associated with Fetterman that much like Joe Biden, oh yeah, back in 2023, we knew that there were problems, including one in which he was apparently almost hit by a car because he was wandering confused around the streets of Washington, D.C. At one point, according to the New Yorker, his former chief of staff, I suppose chief of staff at the time, wrote a 1,600-word email to his doctor, to Fetterman's doctor, Walter Reed, saying that he's off his meds, that or they believed he was off his meds, that he was prone to conspiratorial thinking and megalomania, that he, portrays himself as being knowledgeable of these particular issues that he really doesn't have any grasp of. Some of Fetterman's behavior from the New York Magazine was leaking out into public last year. The Sunrise Movement posted a video of Fetterman mocking and filming one of his constituents, a climate activist, who was calmly trying to ask him about his stance on the pipelines. Earlier this year, a passenger on a flight to Pittsburgh filmed a video of Fetterman getting into an argument with the pilot about wearing his seatbelt in a way that was visible to the crew. The pilot saying, if you want to go to Pittsburgh, it's simple. You're going to have to follow our instructions or be asked to get off the airplane. Moments like these were becoming increasingly difficult for staff to explain. And behind the scenes, things were worse. In March, Fetterman suddenly took an early morning trip to Hartford, Connecticut without telling his team why, leaving them at a loss for what to tell Giselle, his wife, when she demanded to know why he was missing one of their kids' birthdays. Fetterman objected to this characterization, saying to me, quote, I took a weekend trip in March to visit the gravesite of my friend from grad school who died in 1993, a trip my staff and family knew about, end quote. When he was in Washington, there were entire days in which his schedule was cleared because he seemed like he was in no mood to be around others. And when he did have meetings, they sometimes went south. In early February, Fetterman met with Jeremy Ben-Amin, the leader of the progressive Jewish organization J Street. Over the course of Israel's campaign against Gaza, J Street had walked a different line, calling it pro-peace and pro-Israel, a Zionist institution that isn't afraid to take shots at Prime Minister Netanyahu. The organization lives in a gray area, but during the meeting it became clear Fetterman saw things in black and white. You can't reform a carton of sour milk, Fetterman told Ben-Ami, according to notes from the meeting, referring to the Palestinians. Fetterman said he did not believe in a two-state solution and claimed he had never met an Arab person who would condemn Hamas. Quote, correction, the notes from the meeting stated, only a single Arab he had met with his staff was present for wouldn't outright condemn Hamas. So we get to the real sin there, of course. Now, like, again, most things with Democrats, when they do start to come after their own, you know it's not because of anything that is from a genuine place. It is they feel that individual is a detriment to the cause. They may feel or have concerns that he is vulnerable for re-election purposes, particularly amongst the base of the party, who, again, in their anti-Semitism, clearly does not care for Fetterman. And it may just be driven by anti-Semitism in and of itself. Unfortunately, you never really know how much of this is the truth, how much of this is drawn from the truth. Oftentimes, the benefit of having someone that is in your political party that is corrupt or that you have dirt on is that you can discard them in a much easier fashion when the time comes. I would use Mayor Eric Adams as a perfect example of this. the Democrat mayor of New York, who was in the good graces of his own party until he began making a stink about illegal immigration. And the narrative for the entire Biden years was, that the border was fine, that it was racist to be against a secure border, that this was some sort of issue that wasn't really an issue, but it was drummed up by Republicans. And the problem they suddenly had was the Democratic mayor of New York saying, no, actually, this is a big problem. This is a very, very real problem. And the day he was headed to Washington, D.C., to meet not just with Democrats, but Republicans in order to talk about the problem, his motorcade had to turn around because the Biden administration had raided the home of one or more of his staffers. Clearly timed out for very specific reasons and to send a very specific message. And then utilizing the Department of Justice to go after him on charges related to his run for the city of New York. Now, does that mean that he's innocent? Don't know. Because once again, when it comes to the Democrat Party in particular, the justice system is a weapon to be used against those that get in your way. And every so often, a Democrat does just that. They get in the way, and it's clear that they fear Fetterman, again, either because he's not anti-Semitic or they just have concerns about him being weak for re-election purposes. The decision has been made. It's time for him to go. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Maybe Fetterman is now thinking very clearly and has realized that MAGA values are the more superior ones. This regarding the New Yorker piece that dropped on Friday that, lo and behold, much like the post-Biden debate era, we are learning from anonymous sources, many of these individuals, some, of course, that worked in his office, and how for years they've been concerned about his behavior. According to the New Yorker, his former chief of staff wrote an email to his doctor at the time at Walter Reed saying he was a megalomaniac. They were afraid he was off his meds because He just was acting crazy and psychotic. He was almost hit by a car, wandering aimlessly around the streets of Washington, D.C. He would just disappear. His wife supposedly didn't know where he was. They would lose him for days at a time. It's, and this isn't in the last month. These are stories that go back to 2023. Sent from the app, this Fetterman controversy may be rooted in David Hogg's attempt to make the party more radical. Hogg on making the rounds over the weekend, and he's apparently holding fast to utilize money from one of his other organizations to try and oust Democrats in primaries that he feels are not radical enough. They're not effective in his terms. And this, of course, is causing some real pushback within his own party, including a call to overturn his election as vice chair of the DNC, because the Democrats have realized, hey, if we can overturn the election of our own presidential candidate in 50 states, we can overturn anyone's election. This is the now go-to for the political party that is wringing its hands over concerns of democracy, of course. There is a piece regarding Kamala Harris and a report that Democrats are skeptical about a 2028 presidential run. This is the thing that is just strangely detached from reality, and that is why would any Democrats even consider her for a presidential run? She's never won an election in which she really had to fight. We're all familiar, most of us familiar with her background. She was anointed by Willie Brown when she was his side piece. And that's how she got into her first elected position. Well, then as a Democrat in California, it's a cakewalk from there. Her first real test was when she ran for president 6 years ago, or 5 years ago at this point, and was so disliked by Democrat voters, did not even make it to the Iowa caucus before she had to drop out. There were open calls for Joe Biden to drop her from the ticket. Openly. Editorials, some Democrat lawmakers, noting her level of unpopularity and her lack of any meaningful success in any format. And that was the call up until the big donors said, oh, she's the one, after they overthrew the Biden election. And despite just throwing billions of dollars into the campaign, far more than the Trump people were spending, she still not only lost, but lost the popular vote in all 7 swing states. Outside of a 1984-style Reagan victory, Trump could not have done any better. It isn't as if since that moment she's really been out there wowing people. And any time she makes it into the news, it is something that is accompanied with her once again sounding like an idiot. Most recently at some event where she's talking about elephants, and nobody could even figure out. When I first read the story, I thought she was trying to do an analogy about Republicans circling Trump and trying to protect him because he was weakened, but then it seemed as if, no, that wasn't. I don't know. Most people couldn't even figure out exactly what point she was trying to make, even her supporters. But why on earth would Democrats even begin to entertain? I mean, Democrats skeptical about Kamala Harris' 2028 presidential run. They should be beyond skeptical. They should say, are you out of your mind? One Democrat senator, when asked by The Hill if Harris should try again, the answer was a simple no. the Democrat senator who did not want to be identified. Why would you not want to be identified? Every Democrat in their right mind should want to be very, very clear. I'm on the record that I do not think Kamala Harris should run for president again. Senator John Hickenlooper, Democrat from Colorado who ran for president in 2020, doesn't necessarily see Harris as a front runner, even though polls show her leading the pack of potential candidates because of her high name ID, but said he thinks that she could add valuable perspective to the political debate. Democrats who think Harris could be a viable general election candidate again in 2028, she wasn't the first time around. They believe she was handicapped by having only a few weeks to campaign as the party's nominee since Biden didn't drop out of the race until July 21st. Now, this, of course, again, is in defiance of reality. The peak of her popularity was within that first 2 weeks before she was expected to get out there and actually sell herself to the average American. She had all of the hype of the media. Some of the same people who were saying that she should have been dropped from the ticket were now hailing her as fresh and fun and exciting and this renewed electricity in the Democrat Party. Yet every day that went by in which people got past that celebratory announcement, the less popular she became with the average American. You know, every demographic, except for white lefty women with college degrees, increasingly moved towards Trump. Trump increased his support. Every other demographic. It isn't as if it was some sort of close race. This just shows how badly the Democrat Party is branded. One of the comments that David Hogg made over the weekend was that the message wasn't what was so important as the messenger, which is a full acknowledgement that issues are irrelevant. All they care about is power. The message isn't what's important. It's what new, flashy, shiny thing can we put out there to convince people, yes, this is the new one. This is the new incredible person that you are supposed to love and adore and support. And what lulls them into believing that that is going to be something that works is because most Democrat voters respond as they're supposed to. They did it with Kamala Harris. They dutifully accepted the overthrowing of their previous vote for Joe Biden to be the nominee. They dutifully were obedient whenever the DNC said we're not even going to allow delegates to battle this out on the convention. We're going to have a virtual roll call prior to that event. And they mistakenly believe that that is somehow a translation to her popularity or any of those Democrats that they put forth, their popularity before the general public at large. And there are a lot of Democrats who have been around for a while that have grave concerns that they are falling into this trap with people like Ocasio-Cortez and Crockett and these others that have a very small but loud base of support and erroneously believe that that is a representation of how people across this country feel overall. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. The only reason Harris is in the discussion is because the Dems do not have a lot of choices and none of them are good. And there is truth to that. But here's the thing, that this far in advance, these polls are so meaningless. And the fact that Democrats even would entertain her as a potential viable candidate because of polls that are so early that don't even show her like above 20 or 30%, just again shows how desperate they are. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. I keep seeing, though, I don't know, I haven't heard specifically from any Catholics that all the Catholics in the world are outraged. I keep seeing the word outraged that Trump put a little meme out of him dressed like the Pope.
Oh, I didn't see this.
Yeah. Well, that's weird because from all the news stories I see, Catholics are outraged over this.
Well, let me go look at it.
Yep.
Let me go see if I'm going to be outraged.
Well, it's your typical. See, people who hate Trump view this stuff. Wait, that didn't invoke outrage. That
silly.
The people just don't get. People who hate Trump just refuse to get him. Is this not Trump more almost kind of making fun of himself in
I
some
think
way?
it's funny that The Guardian, Trump accused of mocking Catholics.
Yeah.
Okay, well, like what? 18 months ago, we were all domestic terrorists, and The Guardian
Right.
was propping that up. Okay, yeah, clearly you're on our side, Guardian.
Yeah, I keep seeing these people on the left, and they are acting like, oh, well, yeah, people who mock Christianity, who mock Catholicism, are now telling Catholics in particular, you're supposed to be outraged by this. And they, of course, had no problem, like to your point there, with the labeling of Catholics as potential domestic terrorists, of infiltrating the Catholic Church under the Biden administration. I remember talking about this event. It was one of the Major League Baseball teams out in California that were allowing that organization that mocked Catholicism by having drag queens dress as nuns, giving them their own day. And, essentially the message from the left is you Catholics are a bunch of bigots.
Right, and they're like, yeah, you just calm down.
Calm down. It's just so that somehow Catholics are supposed to be okay with, but Donald Trump putting out an AI meme of him as the Pope, that's what should drive you over the line. Remember the weird thing Gretchen Whitmer did, one of the Democrats' favorite hopefuls for the presidency, where she with the Dorito. It was just such a weird thing, pretending to, give communion to this podcaster who was on her knees, and just weird. And anyone who had a problem with that, again, Catholics, you just settle down.
My favorite part about all of this is CNN. They have the photo of the AI Trump generated image, and they have it very very like clearly labeled at the very top. Now this is an AI generated fake image. Okay, CNN, thank you for that.
Yeah, good thing they cleared that up. Well, also, I just keep thinking of all these instances in which Catholics were told, quit being so offended by everything. And the Olympics, remember the opening where they did that? Oh, well, that was just Christianity overall. The Last Supper, they had like the trans people. I think they were redoing that Last Supper imagery, and then they tried to claim that that's not what it was. Like, okay, yeah, sure, it's only that recognizable that everyone was talking about it. And you have all these instances in which the left craps all over Christianity, craps all over Catholicism, but now they have the audacity to tell Catholics, now you should be outraged by this because Donald Trump put out an AI of him as the Pope.
Well, do you remember when Joe Biden went to that abortion rally and he made the sign of the cross?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah, everybody was like, now calm down on that.
Yeah. Oh, man. I thought the picture was funny.
It is pretty funny.
We have scheduled Congressman Burleson coming up here in just a couple of moments. Let's get the latest news update, shall we?
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 70. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 48. For your Tuesday, cloudy with a high near 73. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then showers in the afternoon with a high near 68.
I got a text from a Catholic friend of ours, and I'll tell you who off air. I don't know if she would mind, but she texted me personally. It wasn't on the text line, saying, meme of Trump as Pope is hilarious. Meme makes him look so holy with an exclamation point.
I mean, I could see why some people would be like, don't do that, stop.
Sure.
But,
Well, and the thing...
the outrage.
That's the
outrage.
Everything, the media, it's like one extreme or the other.
Yeah.
They can never, everything has to be, people are outraged, or confused, or in chaos.
Right. And they don't take the same tone like we were talking about with all the other things. Everybody else is like, oh, you need to calm down. You need to calm down. But whenever it's Trump doing something, it's like, oh, well, this is horrible.
Outraged.
Yes.
Every Catholic ever is outraged.
Yes.
Every future Catholic will be outraged by this. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. All right, Michelle Obama getting some headlines, not for reasons I imagine that she would hope. Last week, she set the internet ablaze when she referred to herself as a black man. Did you see that one?
She's something else.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know. But here is some of her latest comments. And once again, this is a situation in which... Did we ever get this audio working over here now that I think about it?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't remember. Let me see. No, we did not. Okay, well, I have a tremendous amount of audio today, of which none of it, including the interview of Trump, evidently will be playing today. So what she says... Here, I can read it to you. She's complaining about the fact that while in the White House, while housing is free and the staffing is free and security is free and all this, that they had to pay for their own food. Now, these are people who are worth tens of millions of dollars. She said, many people don't know. I mean, much is not covered. You're paying for every food, every bit of food that you eat. Oh, you mean like the rest of us? You know, you're not paying for housing and the staff in it, but everything, even travel. If you're not traveling with the president and the kids are coming on Bright Star, which is the first lady's plane, we had to pay for their travel. So in other words, if it wasn't official government business, or she wasn't traveling with her husband, the president of the United States, while he was acting as president of the United States, they actually had to pay for their own travel. I mean, it's just like the rest of us. This is the elite mindset. The disconnect about how this will be perceived by the average person, particularly those who suffer most under the Democratic economic policies that lower the quality of life, that make it more difficult to purchase everyday food items, that make it more difficult for that paycheck to last to the next paycheck, and to have this multimillionaire who whines about how tough she has it complain that, well, when we weren't doing official taxpayer business, we actually had to pay for stuff ourselves. I believe in her mind, she genuinely thinks that the average American is going to be sympathetic to her. That how dare she be expected to pay for her own personal expenses that in no way, shape, or form have anything to do with the duties as First Lady or as President of the United States. By the way, one of the articles about this noted that whenever Barack was first running, she was on, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, it was one of the late night talk shows where she talked about this, but said that she thought that that was a good idea because, you know, she didn't believe in mooching off the taxpayers. Boy, how that changed once she got in there. Congressman Burleson joins us this morning, and I want to thank you for being with us. I mean, it seems like the last few conversations we've had regarding budget, as there isn't really a lot for, you know, like really out there loud that's going on. We just continue to hear about this battle within the Republican Party in terms of meaningful alterations to the way that usually spending is done in this country, and that there are those within the Republican Party that virtue signal some of the Doge stuff, but when it really comes down to it are going to be the biggest obstacles to turning this thing around. Where does everything stand now?
To the mandatory spending side, which is the programs like basically out of Medicaid and out of the green energy tax credits. So if you combine, if we're able to get Donald Trump's plan passed the way that it is on the discretionary side, and we're able to pass the budget, the discretionary spending budget, the way that Freedom Caucus and Trump and leadership have negotiated, we're looking at close to a little over $3 trillion in cuts over the next 10 years, which is pretty significant.
Now, will that allow for President Trump's desire to eliminate taxes on overtime and tipping, some of these tax plans that he's talked about?
No, if anything, it'll help pay for some of those. I mean, actually, it will more than pay for those tax cuts. But at the end of the day, we've got to cut spending. So I much rather like the idea of a government that taxes less, has less money to work with, and forces it to spend less, than a government that keeps taxes high and then and then depending what would happen is the next president comes in and starts raising spending with more revenue coming in. So I'm in favor of both cutting taxes and cutting spending, which is what Trump's for. And the question is, so as soon as he came out with his skinny budget that kept military spending flat on the discretionary side, he had a lot of the budget hawks, budget hawks, the war hawks, the people that, love the military industrial complex. They've come out blasting that. And to me, what I tweeted, I still call it tweets, is that we're getting ready to see who's the part of the swamp. So because this budget is one that the swamp doesn't like, you're about to see all of the swamp creatures come out against it.
We're talking with Congressman Burleson. Last week, I believe it was an executive order regarding funding for PBS and NPR, and just the apoplectic reaction to this. And, there were these hearings, I'm sure we talked about the hearings, and it showed how just clearly and overwhelmingly biased that these outlets are. But to me, that's irrelevant. I just don't understand why, out of all of the different sources of news out there and information and entertainment out there, because PBS they both have entertainment and news. And I'm watching a local news story this morning. They're covering the Arkansas version of NPR out of Arkansas, and listening to these people talk about, that loss of funding means that they're going to have to make some difficult choices. And I'm like, yeah, like everyone else does. I mean, it's just this. It drives me nuts that there is this entitled belief that somehow they shouldn't have to go through what the rest of us go through, and actually have to provide a product that is meaningful enough to the public at large that they can be self-sustained. If they can't be self-sustained, it becomes very difficult to legitimately argue how important you are to the local community, because if you were, then you would figure out how to be self-sustained. And it's just this attitude that they should get to play by a totally separate set of rules and be subsidized by taxpayers when no other media outlets are.
Yeah, that's right. And when they talk about how much people love Big Bird and Mr. Rogers and all that, that's great. And you're just proving the argument that you don't need the government to fund it, because people love your show so much they're going to continue to watch it, and there's value in them. Just like, I said, Disney Channel has Doc McStuffins, but we don't have to send them money, right? Or Handy Manny. We don't have to send money to fund these programs on other channels. And that being said, the reason why Congress can haul into town the heads of NPR and PBS is because we are sending money. Yeah. I mean, when we're sending your dollars to compete against you, Nick, to sending KSGF tax dollars to compete, to send to subsidize NPR and compete against you, the question is, we have a right to at least know what the content is, or care, and have some input, because it's your money, but since you guys are not taking federal dollars, we shouldn't be pulling, companies like you in. But that's what it takes, and that's why I think, if they really think about it, they're better off. If NPR and PBS want to be as liberal as they want to be, that's fine. But you're not going to have taxpayer dollars to do it.
I saw a posting on social media from a local person that's in news, and they're lefty, and they were referencing that this was so damaging and such a danger to democracy that the only source of publicly funded news may be taken away. Well, again, first off, it's not being taken away. It's just some of the taxpayer funding. But I can't think of something more democratic than the free market system and saying no.
That's right.
Yeah, because guess what? Then the people do decide. To me, it is counter to that, and if you want to look at it through the lens of so-called democracy, to say it doesn't matter whether or not you're providing a service that people want, we're still going to make sure that you get money, that's not a democratic process.
No, it's not. And if we called it another name, like when you look at the fact that Russia has got state-sponsored media,
yeah, exactly.
We say, "Oh, look at that! Look at how Orwellian that is,
yeah.
right? Look at how similar to Trotsky and all the other things. People criticize it, and yet we're funding it today. So it's just and it is political propaganda. It's just leftist political propaganda being funded by you without your consent.
Congressman Burleson with us. I know you are getting ready to board a flight. Anything else this morning?
Yeah, this week they were going to, I think on reconciliation, the next steps are the Energy and Commerce Committee. And so that committee is the one that's going to deal with the Medicaid issue. Look, there's a lot of money that and I think the plan is to cut spending on Medicaid, on the wasteful aspects of it, and to get illegals off of it and get people off of it that the program was never intended to be used for, and make sure that the program is available for those who are disabled, aged, blind, children, pregnant moms. If we can ensure that program is available for them, we can also do that and save hundreds of billions of dollars. And so don't let people don't believe all the narrative that the left wants to hand out that we're cutting Medicaid.
Right.
We're saving the program.
Congressman Burleson, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Safe travels.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Penninger Honda officially open and doing business in their new showroom and new service area. If you've not checked it out, last Tuesday they had the big grand opening and some prize giveaways and food trucks. It was a really successful event. And part of the huge grand opening sale, additional $1,000 towards your trade on select retailable vehicles. You can stop in and get an appraisal. Some of the great deals right now: 2025 Honda HR-V for $199 a month lease, new Civic for $199 a month lease, and free fuel for the summer. Pinnaker Honda giving you free fuel for the summer with every new car purchase. Just some of what they've got going on to, draw attention to their new grand opening, their new facility, and all the incredible deals they have at Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 70. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 48. For your Tuesday, cloudy with a high near 73. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then showers in the afternoon with a high near 68.
Streaming live, KSGF.com, also on YouTube. You can watch the program there, either live or, after the show's over. If you want to watch any of it or share it, feel free to do so. That's Springfield's Talk 1041. And we're going to try a workaround here to play some audio for you. It's not the standard way we do it, but last week, those of you that aren't aware, of course, storms, like a lot of you, so according to the reports, there's still about 200 of you without power. The problem didn't start for us when we lost power. It was when it restarted.
Yes.
And we were on backup generators, which allowed us, while the rest of the building was off, to go ahead and continue to broadcast. Then the generator, something went wrong with it, but it was like 15 minutes after that, the power actually came back on. But that surge, which apparently we don't have any sort of protection from, caused some issues with some of our equipment. And so while we're still trying to get some of that remedied, we are, among other things, the traditional way in which I play audio for you is not available. So we're going to try a workaround here with Sarah running things through her computer. That being said, we're going to start with the Abrego Garcia audio. Now, this Abrego Garcia is the golly gee whiz everyday family man from Maryland that is actually a wife-beating member of a terrorist organization who is here illegally from El Salvador. Two very different narratives, one from the Democrat Party and the media. That is the family man narrative, just such a wonderful guy, that they're doing everything they can to reunite him with the wife that he apparently likes to use as a punching bag. And there is newly released audio of her in court back in 2019, I believe this was. Let's see if that's I think this is 2019, pleading with a judge to put a protection order in place to keep him from abusing her any further. And so let's roll with that audio.
Door basement to try to open the door, and then like he pushed me. So then when I was able to go outside to get a phone, I called 911 from a disconnected phone. Now they took a long time to get to the house. It was probably like 20-30 minutes. So I saw a neighbor walking his dog, and I opened the door and I was like, help. And then when he heard me, like he grabbed me from my hair and then he slapped me. And then the neighbor, like he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to react. I have pictures of the evidence, like all the bruises, because even on Wednesday, he hit me like around like 3 a.m. He would just wake up and like hit me. And then last Saturday for my daughter's birthday party, before I went to my daughter's birthday party, he slapped me 3 times. And then last week I did call the police. My sister called the police because he hit me in front of my sister.
Now, this is the woman that Democrats have been working overtime to reunite with her abuser. The amount of capital that they've used, the amount of coverage that they have been given by the media, portraying this individual as just a good family man. A good family man from Maryland, a hard-working individual. This is the person that it's not just about protecting him, but actively attempting to get him back in this home with this woman and these children. The people that the Democrats go to bat for, and if you listen to this show, you know that I've noted this on several occasions, it is almost as if they are incapable of finding just a good person to defend. Yeah, it's crazy because on one hand, as much as the Trump administration is obviously trying to make sure that the first level of deportations are the worst criminals amongst us, but we are talking about the government after all. So you know that there will be some sympathetic figure that gets caught up in this, and that the Democrats could probably successfully use in order to make some Americans go, well, I don't know, maybe I support this deportation thing, but it seems to be getting a little bit out of control. But their insistence on like finding the worst people, and it seems like it's always men who abuse women. The level that they went to bat, even built a statue for George Floyd, a guy that was known for abusing women, threatening to kill one, robbing her at gunpoint while she was pregnant, threatening to shoot her in the stomach to kill her baby. That's the poster boy that they decided to use in the context of police brutality? You're telling me that you couldn't find anyone better? An individual that was shot by law enforcement when he lunged at them with a knife. They were called to the scene because his abused ex-wife, in which she had accused him of everything from physical abuse all the way up to rape, Kamala Harris went to visit him in the hospital. This insistence on finding and defending individuals that treat women like punching bags by the Democrat Party, is there no one in the room to say, maybe we ought to find someone who at the very least doesn't beat his wife, who at the very least hasn't raped his girlfriend? Is that too much to ask? It's just the craziest thing, and this instinct to run to the defense of these people by the Democrat Party is the upside is it does expose them to the American people. And I think that the problem is by time they recognize the damage that they have done to themselves, the damage has already largely been done. Because, as you know, they have a very, very difficult time backing away from something. They love to double down on stuff. And the reports from last week were that Hakeem Jeffries, finally behind closed doors, is telling these Democrats, will you please stop trying to get down to El Salvador and get this guy released so he can be put back in this home with this woman that he's abused for years? Is that too much to ask? And so now this new audio, which are we going to hear this audio aired in mainstream media? All of these outlets that have spent, Lord knows how much time collectively since all of this began in this defense of Abrego Garcia, the amount of time and effort they have focused on it, and this little tidbit of information doesn't deserve any sort of attention? Well, of course not. Because it might make people see things in a more accurate light. And all of these claims about what a warm, caring family man from Maryland. Once again, it exposes them, the media and the Democrat Party, of straight up lying to the American people about what has been, on many days, the number one news item of the day. And I know you all, for the most part, aren't the problem, but there are still people that every single night turn on these news outlets. Every night. Doesn't matter how often they get caught lying. It doesn't matter how often they get caught portraying good people as bad and bad people as being good. It doesn't matter how often they get caught spreading disinformation. There are people out there that will every day still rely on these people for their news. There's this story about Felix Rojas, an illegal alien that it did make headlines because of the appalling nature I think it was weeks ago. He raped a corpse on a New York City subway train because New York, right? And so there was a 400-word report last week in the New York Times about the story, but guess what little bit of information they left out? The fact that he's an illegal alien. Now, I think most reasonable people, given that there is a tremendous amount of discussion around illegal immigration, and given that you have a president of the United States and a lot of Americans who support deporting people who are in this country illegally, particularly those that are criminals, here you have what is as much as people in Democrat-run cities have become accustomed to crime, this one was risen to a new level, which is why it got a lot of attention. And they never once mention his immigration status. Rojas, 44, arrested for first-degree rape after police say he violated the body of a dead man on the R train in Manhattan April 9th. Surveillance footage captured Rojas entering the nearly empty train at the Whitehall Street South Ferry Station, rummaging through the pockets of a deceased man and then sexually assaulting the corpse before fleeing. What the New York Times did not report, however, is that Rojas is an illegal immigrant, a fact confirmed by law enforcement officials. This weekend, the omission sparked criticism on social media where readers accused the New York Times of protecting a political narrative at the expense of telling the truth. Quote, why not just report the facts, said Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin. Well, we know why. Again, this is an instance in which the real news is the fact that these traditional media outlets cannot in any way, shape, or form be trusted because they will be straight up dishonest. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company, lots of you in the listening area experienced damage last week with the storm that rolled through. If your roof or gutters fell victim to the storm, don't go with some random door knocker because oftentimes they don't have your best interest in mind. I want to recommend my go-to guys, and that would be Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they really do want to provide the best solution for you and your home. And sometimes that doesn't mean a whole new roof, but maybe just a simple roof repair. They offer emergency tarping services, free roof inspections, and they work with you through that insurance process without making you sign anything. So if you experience storm damage, go ahead and schedule that free roof inspection with the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
We were talking in the previous segment about this illegal immigrant back in April that found a dead man on the subway and then decided to rape him. And the charges, the subsequent charges, and the fact that the New York Times had a story about this, but deliberately omitted the fact that he was in this country illegally. And that, of course, is because they fear that will bolster Trump's argument that where already you have a vast majority of Americans that support not just deportation, but an even larger majority of Americans support deporting people that are violent criminals. And, so every time we see an example of this, every time we see a situation in which somebody, if they were not in this country illegally, if they had been deported, then that particular crime would not have occurred. And because the New York Times, like so many other media outlets, are not operating as information outlets, but instead a wing of the Democrat Party and, attempting to mislead people about what it is that the president's doing, that this is what you get. You get this sort of propaganda. And we were talking off air also about Sarah had mentioned just how desensitized people have become. And you think about it, particularly in these cities that are run by Democrats, look how low the bar is now. Out in San Francisco, a couple of years ago, we talked about an app that was created so that people could avoid human feces on the streets and syringes that are just lying around. An app. There's so many human beings pooping in public in San Francisco. An app was created to help you avoid it. New York City, you have an illegal alien raping a corpse, and I believe the level of outrage is somewhat lacking. That these Democrat-run cities that have had one-party rule systems for generation after generation after generation have diminished the quality of life to such an extreme capacity that it has become the norm to see people raping dead people on subways and for human beings just to take a crap wherever they want to, in the street, in the park, in front of some sort of store. And what was it? It was somebody. It may have been a celebrity. Noted that it's not like there's a lack of money. These cities tax people in these states in particular, tax people at a much higher rate. It was noted the comparison from New York to Florida and how much more tax dollars per person the government spends in New York versus Florida, yet the quality of life is so much better in Florida than it is in New York. If these cities were dealing with some sort of massive funding shortage, if they had 1/10 the revenue that a state like Florida had, you could potentially point to it and say, well, look, I mean, yes, there are these problems, but you get what you pay for. The problem is the areas of the country in which you have the worst quality of life and the worst performance of government entities and institutions are the areas of the country that have the most tax dollars, that spend the most tax dollars. So you can't even argue, well, it's a funding issue, because clearly it isn't. This is the great utopia. There was a period of time, I know when I was growing up, we would hear about the utopian left and how people that are in the Democrat Party increasingly had total and complete control over areas like Los Angeles and New York and San Francisco, and how they had these pipe dreams of these great utopian societies in which, as long as they had control and they had all of the tax dollars that they wanted, they could create this perfect world, this perfect utopia where everyone would have everything that they ever wanted. There would be no poor people. There would be no homeless people. No one would go hungry. You wouldn't worry about crime because the root cause of crime would be addressed. And so you would have no criminals. Oh, and education was just going to be the best ever. And working on free health care for people. And what has that resulted in? People can characterize these blue cities however it is that they want. But there's one thing you can't avoid, and that is human behavior. And these blue cities and states like California have a mass exodus. Other than illegals. In fact, I think it was last week revealed that California actually, over a year or two period of time recently, had an increase in people in California, but they were illegals. Because they have so many illegals coming into the country and ending up in California that it was offsetting the losses of people who were working Americans that fled as political refugees to other states throughout the Union. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. And now, if you need a great home loan, there's a great place to go, and it's iwantagreathomeloan.com. The Carrickers and the team they're here locally in order to assist you not just in the process itself, but the lead up to making that decision. Is this the right time for you? Maybe a reverse mortgage is something that you have heard about. You wonder, is that a legit thing? It is a legit thing, and that's one of the services that they can, of course, offer you if it is right for you. Utilize their expertise. Ask the questions and tell them, there are questions I don't even know to ask. Have that conversation with them, because that is arguably even more important than the process itself, making the best decision for you and your family. iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. One of the takeaways from, and we'll probably play some audio coming up in a bit from the interview that Trump did with Kirsten Welker. And he's asked a question about whether or not he believes that the Constitution applies to people who are in this country illegally as well as people who are here legally, particularly due process. Now, Trump is smart in not answering the question, because if he answers the question, however he answers it, it can be used to argue against any sort of efforts that the administration may have underway before the courts regarding deportation of people who are in this country illegally. That's happened in the past when Obamacare was being debated. Much of what Obama himself said about, taxes versus fees, or penalties rather, those were used in arguments in court. And so Trump knows that his answer of, hey, I'm not a legal expert. There are lawyers, smart lawyers. They're the ones who are asking and answering these questions. That's the smart approach to take. Now, the way that the media, of course, is covering it all is that Trump says he doesn't know if everyone's entitled to due process. Now, the headlines leave out the part about illegals, and that the question was specifically about those people who are in this country illegally. Now, some may argue, well, the answer's still the same. Of course it applies. But the fact that it's not, they know exactly what they're doing. Because, you see, they have tried to fuel fear amongst even citizens in this country, at times falsely claiming that Trump is deporting citizens. You had Senator Van Hollen falsely claim that the illegal immigrant from El Salvador who was deported was a citizen of the United States. Falsely claimed that. You had false claims that Donald Trump was deporting 2-year-old citizens of the United States, which wasn't true. Their disinformation campaigns have been in an effort to, because the problem they have is that most people support what he's doing. So they have to convince people that he's doing things that he's not doing. What is it that people would be against? Well, I bet deporting legal citizens, so let's just start spreading that disinformation. The other aspect of this that really is so telling about the media and how dishonest it is the kill list during the Obama years. And I know I've gone back to this point on a number of occasions, but it is such a stark example of how Obama essentially was allowed and praised for acting like a king. Prior to his re-election, the New York Times did a piece in order to demonstrate how tough he was on terrorism. This was an area in which he suffered in terms of public perception, that he wasn't that tough on terrorism, and so there was this entire expose demonstrating how he's tougher than any president we've ever had. And part of that was demonstrated through revealing for the first time that every Tuesday morning, he was given a list of people, some of which were American citizens, that had never even been charged with anything, yet he got to pick who died and who didn't. He would be, and it was cleverly done. Instead of picking who died, he picked who wasn't going to die. This was done in order to protect him from any sort of accusations of killing people without any due process or any sort of legal challenges. That way he could say, hey, I didn't say who was going to die. I just said who was going to live. This included American citizens. And there was one in particular overseas that was a man from New Mexico, and his teenage son ended up being collateral damage and killed by our government in which the response from the White House is, well, he should have had a better dad. No due process, no evidence, no court date, no charges. And the media not only weren't critical of it, but the whole point was to make Obama look good. Look how tough he is when it comes to holding these people accountable. So for these same people to act as if Donald Trump, by just saying, hey, listen, when it comes to due process, when it comes to the 14th Amendment, when it comes to the 5th Amendment, and the question as to whether legally people who are in this country illegally have the exact same right as Americans, hey, you know what? I'm not an attorney. I've got very smart attorneys that work in the Department of Justice. These are the arguments that they are making. This is part of their job. To somehow paint that as Donald Trump has no respect for law while they praised Obama for having a kill list of American citizens that he used. It just goes to show. Once again, I know this theme of you cannot trust these people, but they are just appalling when it comes to their behavior and the things that they will excuse while trying to convince people that other things that pale in comparison to what Obama did in terms of due process, but Trump is somehow the wannabe dictator. Does Trump have a kill list we're not aware of? We've got traffic coming up in just a moment. Right now, the latest news update. And you can also use a passport.
That's right. I was
some other
waiting for
forms
you
of
to
ID.
say that because he's ran this story a couple times, so I was waiting for you.
I didn't even catch it the first couple of times this morning.
Your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 70. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 48. For your Tuesday, cloudy skies with a high near 73. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then showers in the afternoon with a high near 68.
Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Over the weekend, I had my windows open. At one point, I had the AC on, and on Saturday evening, I had the heat on. If you went through that kind of same routine, but you experienced any type of issues with your HVAC, I want to recommend Russell and his team over at Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Whether your AC needs a tune-up, to get you all ready for summertime, or maybe it's time for that annual routine maintenance, or maybe you're looking to improve your indoor air quality, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air, they do it all. They also offer 24/7 emergency lines because, they know things kind of pop up after hours too. Whatever your HVAC needs are, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air, they can get you all taken care of. So if it is time to have Russell out to your home, give him a call today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Government begins student loan default collection process. I love that this story is juxtaposed to the media's presentation of Donald Trump and the danger he is to our country because he, quote, might ignore the Supreme Court, when this entire student loan debate situation that we're in is because Joe Biden bragged about defying the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
I mean, he was out there bragging about it, saying the Supreme Court told me I couldn't do it. By golly, I did it anyway. We've got monitors here in the studio, and so I'm not, I catch glimpses, and then closed captioning is on, and I see on CBS This Morning, and of course, it's a single mom. I mean, these people are just so predictable. Here's the single mom who's struggling to make ends meet, and she's asked about whether or not she's going to be able to, how much can you afford per month? Oh, nothing. I can't I can't afford any per month. And they use the word chaos. Of course, this is just so chaotic. Now, number one, if there's any sort of chaos here, it is to be blamed on the prior administration. They're the ones, Joe Biden specifically, but with the help of the Democrat Party in great celebration, just up and decided to dictate that people who took out student loans were no longer going to be responsible for them, that you and I as taxpayers were. And of course, we know that the Supreme Court was like, yeah, you can't really do that. And then Joe Biden, with the celebration of Democrats, defied the Supreme Court, said we're going to do it anyway. I just happen to believe that one of the lessons that increasingly we seem less and less interested in teaching young people is that their word needs to mean something. This entitled idea that it is somehow wrong that when you make an agreement with someone, in this case, a financial institution, that they are going to give you money because you want to go to a place, a university or a college, and you don't have the money to cover it, and you go to a financial institution and they're like, we'll give it to you, and here is the agreement. This is how you're going to pay us back. And they're like, okay, yeah, sounds good. But then to somehow be appalled that they actually have to do it? What are we teaching people? It appears that what we're teaching people, generations of people, that their word is meaningless, that there is no honor in keeping your word, that you cannot be trusted, that you should be almost prideful and virtuous in this belief that you could lie to someone when you commit to borrowing money from them and then paying them back. I mean, this is a cultural problem we have in this country in which people increasingly, they have zero ethics. That is immoral. And if it is not seen as immoral, then that is a clear bit of evidence of part of the problem we have in this country. And instead, on the flip side, they want to paint the people who are getting the financial institutions or us as taxpayers that these dollars or these debts were transferred to, or they attempted to transfer to us, that like we're the bad guys. We're the unreasonable ones. Oh, these big banks. Now, of course, this doesn't even get into the fact that these universities, while virtually, this is government involvement, of course, these endowments that they have and the hand over fist money that they have and the bloated bureaucracy they have, that somehow, while most industries are able to figure out how it is to provide goods and services at a lower cost often as time goes on, that all these all of these education institutions are able to do is figure out how to charge even more money. What are you doing that makes it more expensive? I mean, the whole idea of a university system is to learn and to be provided information that theoretically is only available in certain capacities on other university campuses. There's never been a time in which the free flow and financially free information has ever been so prevalent. I mean, never. Information is everywhere. You can obtain information everywhere. Yet somehow on the university level, they haven't figured out how to capitalize off of that. All they figure out how to do is jack up tuition even more. The whole thing is a scam. The whole formula is a scam. Can you think of any other offering of a good or a service in which you are forced to go into debt, purchasing something that everyone acknowledges you don't really actually need it, but it's just part of what you have to do? And I'm talking about these entry-level courses and this whole idea that you don't even have to know why you're going, why you've taken out tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt for the first year or two. I mean, this is the message that we preach to young people. Oh, it doesn't matter. Just take out that loan. Oh, you don't know what you're going to do? Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out. What sort of insanity is that? And then the agreement to take out the loan and then just believe that somebody else should be responsible for it. I do not feel sorry for you. The only aspect that I do feel a little bit of sympathy is that they have had their minds so screwed up, they don't realize how unethical and immoral their position is. And that they are on full display, letting the world know my word means nothing. I have no honor when it comes to my word. If I enter into some sort of agreement with you, I will just turn around and accuse you of being the bad guy because you expect me to honor my end of the agreement. How is it that you were supposed to pay all yours back, by the way? You've talked about how you weren't part of this dictate exemption. I never even understood how did they pick who they picked?
I don't know. I was never a part of it. You know what I just did? I knew that I had to pay it back, and you're going to not believe this, but every single month when it was due, I paid it.
Well, you're clearly some sort of potential domestic terrorist and right-wing nut job that you would demonstrate integrity in that capacity.
Oh, I'm going to go even further. Whenever there was a pause during COVID, I also made payments during that time too.
Well, you're fiscally wise. I mean, that's another part of this that it's connected to a service that is supposed to be about educating people, yet the level of uneducated decisions that young people get lured into making in order to supposedly learn how to make more educated decisions. And the unfortunate, I don't know if you'd call it a side effect, but you see on full display the complete and total reliance on government. I don't know what I'm going to do now. What am I going to do? Because the government's not going to bail me out. And many would argue that is all part of the plan. It is to make people feel as if you have to rely on government and you have to rely on people in government that are going to promise to make everything A-OK for you and to take away all of your burdens and to wipe out any of the debt that you committed yourself to. And anyone who is opposed to that is a horrible person that is creating chaos. So just be prepared. I've already seen one story this morning. Oh, this single mom, she doesn't know how she's going to make ends meet because the evil Trump administration is going to make her do, what the Supreme Court said. And that is actually be responsible to your commitment. And at the very least, if you don't want to, all right, fine, default, and then have that hit your credit score. But the idea that I should have to be responsible for it, all of these other people who have paid back their student loans or decided to do an apprenticeship somewhere instead of spending 2 years taking out tens of thousands of dollars worth of loans without even knowing why you're going to college in the first place, and then end up with some degree in which there is no job prospect, and then complain about that. Well, I shouldn't have to pay it back because I didn't get a job right away. The whole thing from top to bottom, one giant scam. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company Talk and Text Line. One of the left's arguments is that kids are so young, they don't understand how a giant student loan will affect them for the rest of their lives. But go ahead and let an 8-year-old decide their own sexual identities. Let teenagers take puberty blockers. Absolutely insane that anyone takes the left seriously. And yet they do. One of the most, I guess it's hilarious, but sad at the same time, arguments that Democrats were making when they were wanting to transfer these student loan debts to people who did not take the loans out. And that was that this was going to allow them to get a head start in life. That essentially by abiding by the commitment, that they would start underwater, and starting out life in debt is just a horrible thing. Now, they don't mind putting them in debt, but they would then argue that some of the benefits, I remember this specifically, some of the benefits is that now these individuals will be able to, get a car or buy a home. So we're supposed to absolve them of student loans that, depending on what sort of payment they make, could be anywhere from $10 to, $800. I guess it just varies. It depends. They work on you based off your income and so forth. But then to turn around and argue, oh, that money you're saving because you need to put it into a 30-year home loan. So they were arguing against young people having debt as something that was, going to hinder them when it came to beginning their life, but then argue that they could use the money that they're, quote, saving in order to go into debt. The circular reasoning. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 70. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 48. For your Tuesday, cloudy with a high near 73. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly cloudy in the morning and then showers in the afternoon with a high near 68.
Trump sat down with Kristen Welker, NBC, and I think it was probably what was expected. There's a few bits of audio that I want to play here. Let's cue up with Trump listing items that have gone down in price. You get that one all queued up there. All right, so this is the exchange between Kirsten Welker of NBC and Donald Trump on the costs of things.
Maybe.
You can do it.
Interview already. Prices are down on groceries. Prices are down for oil. Prices are down for all energy. Prices are down at tremendous numbers for gasoline.
Now, I like how she at least acknowledged, well, right. Yeah, okay, the grocery thing, you know. The fact that she had to go to strollers tells me that they really had to search for something in which there has been a big, some sort of price increase. And this is how it goes. We all know this. The Biden years, we were told things were better than they were. We were told inflation didn't exist. Then we were told it was transitory. Then we were told that inflation really was a rich people problem. And all of the middle class and lower class people in the country weren't really experiencing it. Then some went so far as to say, well, just deal with it, because if Trump becomes elected president, he'll be a dictator. So if you have to pay more for groceries in order to stop a dictator from being president of the United States, then that's just what you got to do. That was one of Whoopi Goldberg's arguments. She was tired of hearing people complain about inflation because we were talking about democracy. And now that Trump is president, well, sure, groceries are down and energy is down, oil is down, gasoline is down, all of these meaningful things that people have to purchase every day. But what does Kirsten Welker lead into? Tires and strollers. Now, obviously, these, an increased cost to whatever degree for a stroller or for a buying new tires. This is something that, we don't ever want higher prices. We like the idea of lower prices. But to lead with that, and it's not as if she was not disputing these facts as he listed groceries, talking about eggs, talking about milk, talking about cereal, talking about sugar, talking about flour, talking about hamburger buns, talking about ketchup, talking about all of the things that people get at the grocery store. And she just dismissively, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, there is that. Well, what do you think is important? I mean, it's just insane. Can we get the audio of he's asked about being called an authoritarian? Now, this is the sort of what do you say to people who claim you beat your wife question. It's where you get to paint somebody, the person that you're asking the questions of, you get to paint them in a certain way without accusing them of it, but, masquerading it as, well, this is what other people say. And so that, of course, must mean that true. What is your defense? And here he's asked by her about being labeled or leading us down the path of authoritarianism.
What do you say to those who believe you are taking the country down an authoritarian path?
Well, there you go again. Why don't you ask it a different way? Many people wanted to come into our country. Many people love Trump. I won the election. They didn't win the election. I got a lot more votes than they did. I won the popular vote. I won all 7 swing states by a lot. A lot of people were surprised. I said, I think he could win 4, maybe 5. No, I won all 7. And I won by a lot. And I won, actually, I think there was a lot of hanky-panky going on, but it was too big to rig. That's the good news. It's too big to rig. But let me just say, so when you make these statements about people say this, people, well, they had their chance at the election and they lost big. So you should ask the question differently. You should say, what about the people that want to be in this country? What about the people that love this country?
But what do you say? I'm asking it on behalf of those people to give you a chance to respond to them. What do you say to those people, sir?
Those people are going to be very happy. They're going to have to see some results. And I think we had a great 100 days. There are a lot of people that say it was unprecedented. It was an absolutely unprecedented 100 days. And I hope that they're going to be right.
We'll play the Sanders Ocasio-Cortez response coming up next here. Now, there's a couple of ways to respond to this. And one is, if that were true, you wouldn't be able to ask that question. This is the most obvious response to show that those claims are claims of hysteria that are not grounded in reality. If Donald Trump were an authoritarian dictator, you would not be able to. When you were over on your way to happy hour, you said people were out in front of the VA protesting Trump.
Yeah.
That would not be happening. Do you see protests occurring in North Korea under the authoritarian regime? Do you see massive protests taking place in China? No, of course not. The fact that you can accuse Trump of being a dictator, that you can accuse Trump of being authoritarian, shows that he isn't. Because you would go away to never be heard from again if that were the case. You would not have these interviews. You would not have media outlets that are so brazenly dishonest, all to make Donald Trump look bad. Those are not characteristics that you see in a totalitarian regime. Of course, there's another way, and it was what I would call the Polyev way, the conservative candidate for prime minister in Canada who didn't win. But I can tell you right off the bat what his response would have been. Who said that? Who? You keep saying these people. What you're saying that you want to give me a chance to respond to people who claim that I'm leading us down a path of authoritarianism. I want to know what is the exact quote here, and from who does it come? I need to know. Who are these people you're talking about? Well, critics. No, but who? You're asking me to respond to an allegation, and you're not even saying who is giving the allegation. You're not giving me any direct quote. You're just throwing out this vague assertion that people are out there calling me authoritarian without giving who they are, what reason they give for it. How am I supposed to answer a question when I don't know any of the information surrounding it? I can't do that. Who is it that's saying this? Of course, it's an absurd notion. And the people who claim this are the people who are fully supportive of censorship. They were fully supportive of the Biden administration utilizing its power and threats to shut down social media and to have people disappeared off social media. We know all of this was going on through released emails and confessions by the likes of Mark Zuckerberg. Of course, we saw what a difference that Elon Musk made by just stopping the censorship pressures that were coming from the administration, on what was Twitter. The Hunter Biden laptop story, of course, the full use of the FBI's power and influence, along with 51 people associated with the CIA writing a letter falsely claiming that that story was Russian disinformation, which resulted in media outlets censoring it. The left supported all of that. Those are just a few examples. So, whenever those same people, without any evidence, claim that Donald Trump is authoritarian, it's beyond laughable. And increasingly, it's why people on the left have lost their influence. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Ozarks elder law. I can't think of a scenario in which someone, other than those who have already protected themselves and their family members by going through Ozarks elder law, I can't think of any other scenario in which it would not be well advised to utilize the services of Lori Rook and all of the folks at Ozarks elder law. I've not been intimately involved in this particular sort of scenario, but oftentimes you hear about people that they sell off their assets because they need to go into an assisted living facility. They have to go into a nursing home. And so they've spent their entire lives building up equity and land in their home only to have to sell it off in order to, be under some sort of economic wealth threshold to qualify. That oftentimes is unnecessary. The family farm getting sold off because you're, quote, too rich to get qualified for Medicare. This is an area where Ozarks elder law can build the strategy where you don't have to sell things off. Now, this becomes a shock to you, but government isn't always real transparent about these things. And that's why, whether it is, preparing for the handing off of these assets to family members, again, you don't want to just give it to them for free. That can screw them over. Or the belief that you have to sell off the assets to qualify in order to get a more agreeable economic situation when it comes to assisted living or nursing homes, you got to visit with the folks at Ozarks Elder Law. Consultation doesn't cost a thing, and they don't bill by the hour. It is a one, straight up fee. Here's what it'll cost, so you don't have to worry about the unknown in that capacity. OzarksElderLaw.com, also KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. All right, one last bit of audio, though I'm sure throughout the day you will hear on this station other bits of audio as well. The Donald Trump interview with NBC's Kirsten Welker, and here he is talking about Jasmine Crockett and Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, essentially the leadership, if you want to call it that, within the Democrat Party.
And you know what I can't name? One Democrat. I mean, I look at the Democrats, they're in total disarray. They have a new person named Crockett. I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person. And they said, she's the future of the party. I said, you have to be kidding. I don't know what they're going to do. Challenge. It's really good to have a two-party. It's good. Being challenged is okay. It keeps you sharp. I don't know what they're going to do. They have nobody. Bernie's 87 years old or something. And Biden is the worst thing that ever happened to old people because he was grossly incompetent. And I think maybe for artificial reasons. He had operations and things. So maybe that's an artificial. But I know people that are unbelievably sharp and they're older than 87. But I watch Bernie Sanders. He's a nut job, but he's still sharp. He's sharp as you. He's the same guy he was. He hasn't gone down. But Biden is he's the worst thing to happen to old people.
I like that he's Bernie Sanders is 87 or something. I don't know how he's 83 or 84. Is he somewhere around there?
I feel like
He's
right.
early 80s. I want to say he even referenced it when he was asked about potentially running for president.
He's 83.
Yeah, 83. And he's like, I am 83 years old. Trump does have a point there to some degree. And listen, the media even tried to play the number angle in terms of age. Like, it wasn't that they tried to position it, well, Trump's only a few years younger than him, and so if Joe Biden, if you have a problem with him, he was sworn in when he was 81, and here you've got Donald Trump. If he gets elected, then he's going to be about the same age Biden was whenever he first got into office, and so how do you square that away? It's not about the age thing. It's about the cognitive decline. It was never about the age thing. There are people who are, as Trump indicated, older than that even, who are very sharp individuals. Joe Biden just clearly was not one of them. And so his argument here is that essentially, not just Joe Biden's existence, but the way that the media tried to protect him was a disservice to people of that age, because they tried to make it sound like the issue with Joe Biden was just his age, that was an age issue. Now, they weren't arguing that was a correct analysis. They weren't saying Joe Biden is too old, but they kept trying to make it seem like the age issue, people who did have a problem with Joe Biden, it was because of his age, and then trying to portray him as being perfectly normal and not having any sort of cognitive decline as somebody who's that's just somebody his age. Everyone his age, every once in a while, you slow down a little bit. I remember one Democrat member of, I forget if he was on the Senate or the House, but, talking about how, I forget things every once in a while, and they just tried to play Joe off as this is the way anybody in their early 80s is, which, of course, isn't true. And that is where Trump is coming from, that angle, that he just really, really was bad for people who happen to be in that particular age category. The zero IQ or low IQ of Jasmine Crockett. I mean, I'm telling you, he is absolutely right. And he said something here that I think is important to note. And I believe him when he notes that it is good to have pushback. It is good to have competition. It is good to have, a two-party system with competing ideas. The problem is one of the two sides right now is not only not challenging Republicans with good ideas, but they are instead the absolute bottom of the barrel. They are, it would be great if the Democrats' approach was, okay, Republicans, in the minds of many Americans, have made things better, so how can we make things better? And that used to be the way that they would operate to some degree. That all died off in the 90s. Bill Clinton was really the last leader in the Democrat Party to shift and pivot in order to try and provide better results for the American people. Once Obama came into power, the Democrats shifted away from that. And with Obama, a lot of it was racial. Anytime there was any sort of pushback on results or any sort of counter to whatever policies Obama was pushing, they would play the race card. And so they became very comfortable no longer having to actually try to provide results that benefited the American people because they shifted to just name calling. And that's what the Democrat Party has been ever since Obama was president. Just call the other side racist, call the other side homophobic, call the other side election deniers, call the other side science deniers, call the other side Nazis, call the other side Hitler or Putin puppets. And that is all that they've become. Well, the downside of that is there isn't any challenge to the Republicans' approach that would then force Republicans to, compete. In terms of meaningful results, we really only do have one political party that relies on that. I don't think Democrats even argue any longer that they are reliant on results. Their argument is good versus evil. We are good, they are bad, so you must support it. I noted in the last hour that you had a lot of Democrats that were telling people that they needed to get over the inflation issues because we're trying to save the country. And you think you don't like inflation, just wait until the evil Nazis get in charge. That was an instance in which they were acknowledging that economically speaking, their policies were going to make people worse off, but the alternative is evil Donald Trump, Nazi president of the United States, and that is the summation of what they have run on since the Obama years, and that is we are good, they are bad, so that's why you need to vote for us. Forget everything else. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Great Escape, open for reservations. We had a great happy hour at Retro Metro. A lot of the folks that joined us for our happy hour, of course, have gone on past Great Escapes, going on future Great Escapes. There was some who have never been on a Great Escape. Cam, of course, was there, and that always adds to the excitement and the realization that it'll be here before you know it. It seems November is so far away, but every every year when we're just a month away. We're like, can you believe it's here? Remember when we were saying how far away it
I
was?
know.
I mean, that's,
It'll be
yeah,
here
it
before we know
will
it.
be here before we know it. And you have until July 1st to make your final payment. I know I've talked with some people who have said, well, I just don't know that I really have the money right now. You can make that down payment, which is $500 a person, and then you can make payments after that. So we're in what, May? You got June, and then, into July. So there's still plenty of time in order to be able to, make payments in a more reasonable way, as opposed to having to do it all up front. Under $2,000 a person, junior suite. That is for a garden view. That covers your airfare. That covers the transportation that we'll all have together from the airport to the resort. It covers all the food. It covers all of the entertainment. It covers all of the beverages, that being non-alcoholic or alcoholic. And it isn't one of those deals where, oh, well, here's the local beer that is covered, but if you want something a little nicer, then you have to pay for that. That's not how it works. It's all covered, including the liquor cabinet in each of the junior suites, and of course the mini bars as well. And it's just a great time, and hey, not a bad place to do this show. Get yourself reserved for the Great Escape coming up in November. Beautiful Cancun. Just go to ksgf.com and find the Great Escape there. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.